Call the meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the New Jersey statutes regarding open public meetings, notice of this meeting was legally advertised in the Courier Post and South Jersey Times and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Fire exits are located through the double doors to your left and right. Please silence all mobile devices. Stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Here.
Mr. Longfellow?
Here.
Ms. Pasqualeone?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Fazio?
Here.
Mayor Gattinelli?
Here.
Mr. Platt?
Here.
Mr. Gonter?
Here.
Move on to the bill list. Need to make a motion to amend the bill list, adding the supplemental list. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion on the bill list? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes, abstain to Fazio. We're going to enter a discussion with the Chief of Police, Pat Gersick. Pat, if you want to come up.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Chief Gersick. Just want to take a minute or two out of council's time tonight to present a 5-year strategic plan that I've put together over the last month. The purpose of the plan is to advise you, the council and mayor, my vision and goals for the police department for the next 5 years. This plan will focus on numerous different areas with the following key points: policing and student safety, community policing and community outreach programs, organizational structure, staffing, facilities, and equipment. If you turn to the first page, some of our accomplishments over the last 30 days, we've reorganized the structure of the police department to make it more operationally efficient and effective. We've started to address school safety in our schools. We've assigned a new school resource officer to the schools, and in the near future, we'll address or start to explore programs like DARE or similar programs. We've reached out to the community more utilizing our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter accounts. In the very near future, within the next week or two, we'll announce a new K-9 that was brought on to Washington Township. K-9 officer was chosen, and his partner wanted to go extensive training. Then they'll come out on patrol, and the dog will be a patrol and narcotics dog. We're currently doing an analysis of our most updated training standards. Data compiled will be used to set the standard which we will train our men and women. That's my number one priority, is to make sure our officers are kept safe. Number two priority is to make sure the residents are kept safe. In the booklet here, you'll see this is a school shooting scenario training that we conducted after hours in Bell School. And the photo to the right is EVOX training. It's driving courses for police officers. Within the last 30 days, I've also met with our union leaders and discussed several issues. They seem very satisfied that the township is willing to negotiate in good faith to get their contracts settled. We're going to undergo an accreditation process. Somehow it lapsed over the last couple years. It's a very large undertaking. Accreditation ensures that the best practices in law enforcement are implemented through policy and training, ultimately reduces internal and external liability as a cost saving for the township. In April, I'm going to have our first department meeting with all of our staff, and at that time, I'm going to implement a community policing initiative for the town. We're going to reach out to the community more, get more involved with community initiatives. Community policing emphasizes changing the role of police from reactive, and I want the officers to be more dynamic and progressive. All officers will engage in community policing, and they'll be held accountable on a daily basis for community policing. There's been issues over the years with our promotional process. We'd like to explore that and make sure that the rules and regulations are followed to the T. This way it'll eliminate costly grievances and lawsuits. We'd also like to expand the body-worn camera program. Currently, we have about 23 cameras. We're budgeting for 10 additionals. The problem we're exploring is the batteries aren't lasting a full 8-hour shift because the officers are sharing them. And with officers working extra duty jobs and overtime, it just seems like we don't have enough body cameras at this time. One of the areas we want to address is police department signage. Oftentimes, residents call and ask where our police department is located. We need to have a professional image displayed out there on Green Tree Road. I put an image here of the Voorhees Police Department, and that's something that we'd like to look into. The third year, we'll continue with our accreditation maintenance, just keeping up with it. We're going to have to address the police vehicle deployment. There's a total of 10 vehicles with a combined million miles on those. I've included pictures of those vehicles. We currently announced a testing procedure to hire new officers. The first week, we accepted over 70 applications. The physical fitness test is in March. It'll be held at the high school track and also in our CAC building. I'll invite the mayor and council to attend the physical fitness testing, and then after the physical, there'll be a written test administered by the New Jersey State Chiefs Association, and then candidates that pass the first 2 phases will then come in for oral interviews. In the 5th year, obviously, there's capital improvements that we'd like to budget for. The buildings need a fresh paint, carpets, updates, facilities, windows and doors are falling apart. The building's sort of been neglected over the years, and it needs some attention. Also, during the first 5 years, we'd like to add additional special police officers. They receive the same training as full-time police officers. They're accredited through the state. Our agency is allowed to have up to 25% of the number of full-time officers. The officers work for approximately $15 to $18 an hour, and we could use them for events, traffic posts, community events, Super Saturdays. It's also a mentoring program. And then finally, sometime within the next 5 years, we're going to need to do a technology upgrade. This system currently isn't efficient and effective and could definitely need upgrades. It says here that specifically upgrading to Barracuda Web Filter, Barracuda Spam, Virus Filters, Barracuda Email Archive. I'll be here if anyone has any questions. Feel free to ask. I'm always available. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I'd like to say something. Thank you, Chief Gersick, for presenting that to us. It really took a lot of thought and effort to put this together for us. We can all see already within the first 30 days that there's been a lot of changes and good changes for the community. Good work on that, and can't wait to see it all come to play. Thank you.
I definitely need council support.
Council, we have to go back to the bill list. We need to actually approve it. We only made the amendment. So do we have a motion to approve the bill list February 8th, 2017?
Make that motion.
Second? Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes, abstain, Fazio. Moving on to the minutes. Approval of the regular meeting minutes, January 25th, 2017. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Need a motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes to January 25th, 2017. Do you have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
I remind everyone it is confidential. Those minutes are confidential.
Yes, while they've been approved, they're not being released until the cessation of the litigation regarding the Affordable Housing Act.
Moving on to ordinances. Ordinance 1, 2017. Ordinance fixing the salaries of certain officers and employees in the Township of Washington. This is an introduction only. Do we have a motion?
Can you bit for discussion?
You have to make a motion first.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Point of order, just before we go there, Mr. President, we need a motion to take it off the table. You placed it on the table at the
Oh,
last
sorry.
meeting, please.
I skipped it. So this is a motion to take the salary ordinance off the table. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Roll call. I don't really need to discuss this. Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
No.
Mr. Longfellow?
No.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Fazio?
No.
Motion fails.
So ordinance 1 is
Still on the table.
tabled. Ordinance 2. This is an ordinance fixing the salaries of certain officers and employees of the Township of Washington.
But wait a second, why are we not voting on the introduction for ordinance number 1?
Because it was
Because you left it on the table.
left the table.
No, the motion, the ordinance was not tabled.
Was tabled from the last
Yes.
meeting. so-
Yeah. We tabled it.
It's on for introduction this evening.
Yes, sir. We can go that way.
Well, what's the confusion? Because what I would think, ordinance 1 is completely different from ordinance 2. There are one line that's different.
The ordinance that was previously removed was a different ordinance. Different set, there were things that were added. So this is a completely different ordinance than that which was tabled previously.
So,
This is, if you want to table this ordinance, you can make a motion to table this ordinance. But the ordinance that was supposedly tabled at the last meeting is different from the ordinance that's here this evening.
That is correct.
right, so we just need to make a motion on ordinance 1 then.
Correct.
Motion, this is for introduction only.
Okay. So, I lost the page. So this is ordinance 1, ordinance fixing the salaries of certain officers and employees in the Township of Washington. This is introduction only. Do I have a motion? I'll motion. Is that not what we're supposed to do?
Call for a second?
And there's no second? I
Do you want to
assume it
move
fails.
this or not?
There's no second and it dies.
I'll make a motion for ordinance 2.
Well, just, motion 1 died for want of no second.
All right, moving on. We have a motion for ordinance 2. Do we have a second?
Make that motion.
I have a second?
Second that.
All right. Any discussion on ordinance 2? This is an ordinance fixing the salaries of certain officers and employees in Township of Washington.
Yes,
Just note that this is for introduction only.
Introduction only.
right.
Obviously, if it does get introduced, there'll be an opportunity for further discussion and public hearing upon the second reading.
Right. But I have a couple questions.
Absolutely.
The salary ordinance is a recommendation of the mayor. What is the basis for these increases, which range up to 12% on the maximums for certain positions?
I can answer that most of the positions, or some of the positions are for
Mr. Platt, I'm
for
asking the mayor.
department heads in the Department of Administration. But there are other salaries for other officers that are strictly council funded. So it's not all just salaries for people within the Department of Administration. The primary reason, as I understand it, and our CFO is here, he can address it perhaps better than I can, but to provide minimums and maximums so that there can be proper budgeting and planning for, obviously for budgeting purposes as we go through the years. That's the primary reason for that.
Right, but how are these maximums determined?
I don't know exactly how each one was determined. I understand that there was some adjustments. The maximums were increased to keep up with the level of service, the qualifications of the individuals, and the work required for the different departments.
Can I have a copy of these calculations? I would like to see how they came up.
I don't know if there were such calculations, but again, if you speak with the CFO is here, he can probably answer your question better. I can't tell you why particular numbers were picked. I can just tell you that these numbers were generally picked from a qualitative standpoint to allow for proper budgeting
towns
and
that are still
planning.
much less.
Right, but we can't compare ourselves always to other towns where we don't have the same profit.
We have the same problems, though, and we need to be able to recruit good people and retain good people. If we don't have the proper people in the proper places and we can't go out and recruit good employees and good managers of this township, then we will never have the profit margins in some of these other towns.
Well, we did get supplied with some other towns in our mailbox. It was printed out for us. So, I mean, for example, you can look at Voorhees Township. Business administrator set at 127, CFO 133, Public Works Department head is 100, so
Right,
on
but
and
we
so
should-
forth. But the one thing this doesn't answer is also the amount of time that they've been working at these places.
Correct.
That's a big concern. So, I mean, right off the bat, we can look at the business administrator, Jason himself. This is your first year here, and you are going to get an increase. I mean, you've not even been here, what, a month and 5 days or so?
28 days.
28 days.
That's correct, Nick. You actually sat in my office about 2 weeks ago on a Tuesday morning, and we went over all this, and you said you had agreement with everything I presented. Right
Yeah,
before you
no,
stood
and-
up and you said, I've been doing this for 2 years, and I still don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, absolutely. I'll admit to it. I mean, this takes a lot of time to understand.
Sure.
I have another question. Is there a resolution or ordinance in place that precludes individuals from receiving an increase before an annual performance review or year of service?
This is that ordinance. This is the ordinance.
Right, these are for the maximums, but is there another ordinance or resolution in place that prevents
Well, if
somebody?
the maximum is too high, then make a motion to lower it, or propose an ordinance that would lower it. This is
Right,
what sets
right.
the maximum. There's nothing.
Understood, but there's nothing in place from year to year, so you can jump from the minimum to the maximum in 1 year. Is there a rule in place that prevents that?
Yeah, the voters of this township would maybe
You
remove
vote
a
on
mayor for something like that.
I don't think that's a good answer.
Well, the ultimate answer is that council has control over the budget. And,
That's right.
and ultimately, you make the determination on the municipal budget overall. And this is one part, albeit significant, but relatively small speaking. So you ultimately have the say on the overall 2017 municipal budget at the end of the day. But as to the salary ordinance, for the reasons that I stated, comparables, things that Mr. Longfellow indicated, those were generally the qualitative reasons why there were some adjustments to the maximums.
I have a question for the mayor. Do you plan on giving the newly hired employees raises before 1 year of service?
The figures are there. That's what I decided.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Well, it's a big increase. We wanted to have somewhat of a conversation. Thank you.
What is the big I'm sorry.
It's
What is the big increase? What are you talking about?
I compared to prior year to this year, and most of the people in these positions, at least 5 of 7, just started 28 days ago. I actually compared all the way back to 2008. And last year and the prior year, both you, the remainder of council that was in these positions, voted yes for the salaries last year at the salaries that they were. And you felt that they were commensurate with the roles.
Okay.
That was also based on the people that ran the roles and their experience and credentials.
Right. Have you worked in your position before?
No, but I have an MBA, and I built a brokerage firm, over 5 years that I was offered 7 figures for. So I think I can run the town pretty well.
I have to be honest. Oh, what is it? Dan's family? I have to be honest. you're making a big deal over $4,000.
It's not 4,000. From maximums last year to this year,
Bob's maximum last year was 106.
okay, and that's a $10,000 increase from the maximum. 160.
$4,000 increase to 110.
That's just
That's
for one
public
position.
safety.
That's just
It's
for
like
one
looking at it
position. That's
as a
for one
whole.
position. We have to look at it a whole, and we're not
Well,
including
you're asking him
pension.
if he's qualified. I mean, Bob didn't even have business background. You're talking to someone
Right,
with
but
an
he
MBA.
also just started this position. So how do we? How
As
does
did you.
As did you. Are you going to give up your $6,000?
I would be willing to.
Okay, sure. Then I'll be willing to stay at my amount. No problem. We can do that.
Quiet down.
Let me try to, if I can, bring this to the fore. Under our code, as you've probably read, because I know you do your homework, we're required to, you council is required to adopt a salary ordinance immediately after reorganization. Now, obviously, it can take some time. Minimums and maximums are very, very appropriate, and they are the typical type of salary ordinance that you see in all communities, especially communities of this size. And ultimately, they are a planning and budgeting tool. Having said all of that, in terms of where somebody might fit within it, ultimately, council's going to have the call. Just like the mayor sent you appointments for the various department heads, this is part of that whole process. And ultimately, the end part of the process is the budget process. Council approves the budget. Mayor sends a budget, council approves the budget. So this is really just, again, one part of it. It's based upon qualifications. I don't want to discuss my qualifications versus anybody else's qualifications, but I've been doing this for a long, long time, and I've dealt with Faulkner Act, so, I mean, nobody's questioning my qualifications. The qualifications issue is just one part of it. You've already confirmed the mayor's appointments. This is really part and parcel of that. And listen, here's the bottom line. It can be fairly debated, and it can be debated again when we go into the public if it gets introduced. And I think it's a matter of voting up or down on anything here.
I think the
Right, but I
it's
think-
not about one position here. It's
about
the
multiple.
whole.
And not
It's
and
a
doesn't
lot at
include,
once.
and it's not only salaries. It includes pensions, benefits,
They always-
insurance.
Benefits are fixed.
They're all fixed by the state, but look, again, all of these numbers are there, but ultimately you have the final call through the budget process.
Right. I'm just trying to be mindful of the taxpayers. I don't think they would want this, especially those living on a fixed income.
Is there any other discussion on ordinance 2? Seeing none, roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
No.
Motion passes 3-2 for an introduction only.
Now, here's where things get interesting. So, ordinance 3. This is an ordinance amending section 285-11 of the Code of the Township entitled Administrative and Enforcing Officer. This amendment was to make the zoning officer's position part-time. In the salary ordinance, that was just introduced, it is set, the salary is set for what is to be a full-time employee. So, I would make a motion now to table ordinance 2. However, if that wants to get a second, or ordinance 3, I'm sorry.
There's been a motion on the floor to table ordinance 3. There needs a second.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on ordinance 3?
I think we need a full-time zoning officer. I think we're a town that's big enough that needs a full-time zoning officer. There's plenty of businesses and work to be done. A town our size has budgeted over the last, if I remember correctly, about 10 years for a full-time zoning officer. So this isn't an increase in money into our budget. This is keeping it flat and getting the services we need. I don't think having someone who's already working full-time for the township, in addition to a stipend, working an unknown amount of hours is appropriate.
Is there a backlog of work?
Is there a backlog of work?
Yes, for the zoning position, because I know
Let's
it.
drive around the town. I mean, a lot of people aren't happy with how the town looks. I don't know if there's a backlog of work, but I think
So as the story goes, from what I understand of why the zoning officer initially, about 6 years ago, was a part-time position. At that time, property maintenance was thrown into the zoning officer's position. Last year, we know that happened where it was separated. And the zoning officer's duties at that point were minimal at best. And it became more of a 10-hour-a-week process to do the specifically zoning officer duties within the code. So that's where this stems from, to make this a part-time position once again and use the same person that's been doing it. That way you're not adding another person in the attempt to save taxpayers' money here. That was the attempt. However,
I mean, I think getting out and, getting these foreclosures up to date, even having 2 people on it, there's not enough people in this town to do this kind of work. We need extra people checking on these businesses, these closed businesses. We have Diamond Furniture on the road right now that's all boarded up. I know somebody's looking to get in there, but we need somebody out on the street enforcing the zoning code,
I would agree.
not someone in the clerk's office.
But is that a violation for them to board that up?
Yes. It is violation.
Did you look it up?
Yeah. I don't have it with me right now, but I did.
Oh. I mean, that's what
And
I
it
don't
looked,
know.
it's a violation, and it looks really bad.
I get that it looks bad, but
And
there
it
are...
detracts from the overall look of the Black Horse
See, like,
Pike. It makes
here's
it
the
even
problem if
more
you don't let them
difficult.
board up and protect that building. Now, this happens more down in South Jersey, but not maybe as common, especially on a busy road like that, where people will come in the middle of the day and gut the building of copper. It's been happening all over South Jersey. And it's a crew of guys, they're going in, hitting buildings, houses in the middle of the day, and they look like a work crew doing maintenance there.
Yeah, but there's ways to board it up. I mean, you could board it up and paint the boards white rather than it being,
And also, well, it's a lot easier for a police officer who's checking on these businesses to look into a window versus a
Yeah.
piece of wood.
So, I mean, that's something that we could address later if we wanted to change the code to, somehow help building owners in that regard if they do want to board up their building. Either way, yes. Does it look bad? Absolutely.
In an area that needs a lot of work, and we need to attract businesses to that area.
I mean, the whole Black Horse Pike, the Dulcie Drive, we have to hold the businesses accountable. We need somebody out on the road to do that. We need a full-time zoning officer. If you look at the position, it's very detailed on all of their duties. I don't think that combining 2 positions is beneficial to the town right now.
Well, in our code now, the zoning officer's duties, I mean, it's just, I'm looking at 285-12, duties of the zoning officer. This is to examine, I'm not going to sit here and read it, but it's very minimal of what's in here pertaining to their duties. Now, as far as property maintenance goes, that's where the issue came in, where it was a separated position at one point last year. So I don't really think that even if the town were to get economically more busy, the zoning officer's probably not going to be needed that much more. I mean, that was really where I was going with this. So, but I guess we can talk about it for another hour. We're not going to get anywhere. However, I guess we'll put it to a vote. We have a motion second. Any other discussion on this issue?
The motion, I understand, is to table
Yes,
this ordinance?
Yes, this is the motion to table ordinance 3, 2017. So, any other discussion?
I just want to add a little bit on this. I mean, I did a little homework on this, and this was at one time a full-time position.
It was also a part-time, too.
2012, it was a full-time position. Then we dropped it to a part-time position. And everybody has some good reasons here, but quite frankly, take a ride down 42. We talk about Diamond Furniture. There's where the Pizza Hut was down, further down, across from where Target is. We got graffiti on signs and buildings there. So it's really starting to look bad, the artery that's running through our township.
Yeah, but I don't think some of those things, like a graffiti on building, I don't know if that would be consistent with the zoning
Well,
officer's
not
duty.
even that. We had an incident, was it a week or two ago, Leo, where we had a business that as having ABC violations, possibly ABC violations.
Correct.
You know, there are things that a zoning officer would pick up and correct. If you have a part,
I'm
and
pretty
it
sure the zoning
decides,
officer was there. So
but we could have caught it a lot sooner than before we
how
get
do you-
complaints.
How do you catch that sooner?
You make visits to customers.
Do you stop at every
No,
retail store
you
in
make a
Washington
schedule.
Township?
You can go out and visit places and not just, you can be proactive instead of reactive with things.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
This is a roll call to table ordinance 3. Ms. Donato?
No.
Mr. Longfellow?
No.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Ordinance 3 failed to table. We can have another motion on ordinance 3 if there's needed.
I call the question.
Motion to introduce? Can I have a second? On the motion to introduce this ordinance?
Yeah, and understanding that this ordinance is to take what is now a full-time zoning officer position and make it a part-time zoning officer position.
Yep.
That's the motion, that's the ordinance for introduction only this evening. That's the question.
That's correct. So do I have a motion to make this a part-time position?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion on making it? I guess we had the discussion at this point. Go ahead and roll call.
Ms. Donato?
No.
Mr. Longfellow?
No.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
This ordinance fails to be adopted. Introduced, I'm sorry.
Resolution 50. This is a resolution to approve professional service contract, I'm sorry, Resolution 50 and 51 are to remain tabled due to incomplete contracts.
Thank you.
Resolution 56. This is a resolution to submit a grant with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for reconstruction of Stagecoach Road. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Who seconded that?
I do.
Shaw.
Mr. Shaw? Okay, thank you. Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 57. This is a resolution to submit a grant with the New Jersey Department of Transportation for resurfacing of Herfill Road. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 58, accepting an emergency management performance grant and an emergency management agency assistance program grant. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 59, a resolution commemorating and congratulating the Gloucester, Salem, Cumberland Counties Municipal Joint Insurance Fund on 25 years of successful operations. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 60, this is a resolution authorizing advertisement request for proposals for banking services.
Council President, can I make a statement about this resolution before you vote on it?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if you've done RFPs for banking services in the past. I don't know if you have or you haven't done so, but the the local public contracts law specifically exempts these types of services from having to be RFP because banking services are regulated by other statutes. But we felt in administration that for transparency purposes and to actually get a competitive bid, to get multiple people, competition is a good thing, is to go out and do the RFP and see what we get in terms of the best possible banking services, lowest costs, highest interest rates for the trust fund accounts and so forth. So that's why we've actually sent this resolution. We proposed this to council. We think it's a good idea for a number of reasons, and I just wanted to let you know that's why we're doing it.
So do we have a motion for Resolution 60?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Sorry. Resolution 61. This is a resolution accepting the performance bond and escrow for McDonald's USA LLC. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
This is Resolution 62, a resolution authorizing a change order number 1 in a contract for Fairmount Drive roadway improvements. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Abstain.
Motion passes 4.
Resolution 63, resolution releasing the performance bond and acceptance of a maintenance bond for P&A construction. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Abstain.
Motion still passes.
Resolution 64 is a resolution accepting grant funds for the Cops and Shops grant from New Jersey Alcohol Beverage Control. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Oh.
Any discussion?
Who seconded it, Mr. Longfellow?
Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 65, resolution authorizing transfers between 2016 appropriation reserves. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 66, resolution authorizing an emergency temporary appropriation of funds.
This resolution needs 2/3 affirmative votes or 4 out of 5 to take effect.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah. Can I ask the CFO a question? Can you explain this further, why we're authorizing emergency temporary appropriation of the funds?
Yeah, in the beginning of the year at the reorganization meeting, we appropriated.
Mic's not on, Jim.
budget to allow the municipality.
The mic's not on, Jim.
Sorry. So I'll start again. In the beginning of the year at the reorganization meeting, we put a resolution through to adopt a temporary budget. The temporary budget is 26.25% of the previous year's annual budget. It allows the municipality to operate during the first 3 months of the year. What usually happens is because of the timeliness of the regular budget being passed, it doesn't usually happen until the April, May, sometimes go further than that. I put this resolution on the agenda in order to increase that 26.25% appropriation to 50% to take us through with appropriations as far as we need them, to make sure that we can stay current with our bills.
That's
And-
50% of last year's budget, Jim?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on Resolution 66? Seeing none, roll call.
I need a motion and a second. I don't.
I'll motion that. Make that motion.
No, she'd motioned it, I thought.
Second? I must have missed the second then.
I'll be the
it's
second.
fine.
Now roll call, sir.
Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Resolution 67. This is a resolution appointing Joseph McCucci as full-time zoning officer for the Township of Washington. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion?
Second.
Discussion. So how does this work if we have two appointed zoning officers?
What it means is that if this resolution gets passed and adopted, then this individual will take over for the existing zoning officer.
But no notice went out or anything.
Doesn't have to. The zoning officer position serves at the pleasure of council, and I've already rendered a legal opinion that this is a full-time position, and I'm talking about the position, not the person, but no one individual can hold two full-time positions. So what would happen is that this person would take over if you want to make it an effective date, but the idea is that it would occur immediately.
So, did we solicit any resumes for the position at all?
No.
No resumes were solicited.
Do we have a copy of the resume for this person?
You ran with him. I would hope you would know him.
Yeah, I
That's
do
the
know
little-
him. I do know him, and I don't. What experience contributes to this position?
He was a law enforcement officer for years. We also got his resume through the clerk proceedings. So we do have his resume, actually. You all have it.
I'm talking about specific to this position.
But this position there was no soliciting of resumes.
Do you
for
feel
this.
as though he's unqualified for the position?
No,
Okay.
but, it's trying to be as transparent as possible with the public that if a position's going to open up in the municipality, it gives everybody a chance to at least apply for it. This did not obviously happen. Now, I do know Joe. I'm friends with Joe. Absolutely. Now, how does that make me feel? I mean, this is almost unethical for me to vote yes on this because
Because he's a friend?
a friend, absolutely. You don't give friends jobs, especially when you're close to them.
You give the best qualified person the job.
You socially hang out with him, he's your friend?
No, I know him. I mean, we have a working relationship together,
So
and that
if you
is
feel as
through
though you need to
politics.
abstain, then abstain.
Or
Yeah.
recuse yourself?
Or recuse yourself, then you don't need to vote on it.
But again,
If I could just advise council, I give you this advice all the time. There's a difference between a recusal vote and an abstention vote. Abstention means basically you're not voting on the particular item. Recusal means you're not participating in the discussion or the vote. So it's my opinion that you have to make your own call, Council President, but if you think that it might be ethical, I would just caution you about continuing with discussions. If you don't think it's, you use that word sort of generally, and not capital E unethical or capital U unethical, then certainly go on. Obviously, I'm here to protect you and
well,
everybody
no,
else
thank you
too.
for your counsel. And for me to do this then, having
Also-
ran with him twice and helping him on his last election, I have to recuse myself from this. So I'll step back.
I do have a question, because we appointed the zoning officer. It was a 4-1 vote, so I'm confused as to why this is,
It was a 3-0 vote.
no, actually
Two of us
4-1.
abstained.
No, I pulled the records, it was 4-1.
I think you're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. I can provide you the documents.
4-1.
I'm sorry, what are you
Excuse
talking
me.
about? What are you talking about? What
We
vote?
voted Sherry in 4-1. I have a copy of the document.
Well, let me see it. When was it?
I can provide it to you.
doesn't- it's
It doesn't
irrelevant.
matter. It's irrelevant, but I'm asking, well, it's not irrelevant.
It was 4-1 for the part-time position. The part-time position pretty much was just resolved. Now we put a full-time position on. So I guess that issue is moot.
But everybody knew that it could only be part-time based on the other position she had. And they still voted yes anyway.
You should recuse yourself.
You recuse yourself. Barry, what action do you want to take? You have a motion on the floor. If there's no discussion, you can call for the vote.
I'm going to call for the vote.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio recused himself. Passes.
Congratulations, Joe. It's getting added on.
So we're going to head into any old business. We'll start with Councilman Longfellow.
I'm not doing this.
Some old business. We had originally discussed having an advisor come in to discuss a project with us. However, after speaking with Councilwoman Pasqualone, I'm going to make a resolution from the floor that we put out an RFP by our QPA to seek proposals for economic development advisors to the Township of Washington. And this advertisement shall be posted for 30 days. That's my motion.
I'll second that. Any discussion on that resolution? Roll call.
I'll make sure I have the resolution clear. It's a resolution to have our QPA to put out RFPs for an economic development advisor. Okay. Roll call.
That's going to be Resolution 68.
No, 60.
That'll be Resolution 69. I have 68 as the executive.
Got it. Thank you.
So that'll be Resolution 69-2017 for the QPA to put out RFPs for the Economic Development Advisor. I have a motion by Mr. Longfellow and a second by Mr. Fazio and a roll call vote. Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes for Resolution 69, 2017.
Any other old business, Sean?
Oh, no, that's it. Thank you.
Dana?
No.
Joe?
No.
I have none. Daniel?
Angela? No.
New business. Mr. Longfellow?
Done. Thank you.
Dana?
None.
I just want to say on on Saturday, first time that I got involved with the hoagie sale, on Sunday, I'm sorry. And I want to really, although the whole crowd's not here, I want to compliment the township on the job they did. Teachers, parents, especially the school children. I pulled into Orchard Valley at 5:30 in the morning, and I thought I was late because there was a lot of cars there, and there were probably about 200 kids. And it looked like a well-oiled machine after one of the teachers yelled a couple times to tell them to settle down. It was a great job, but it was a good feeling of community, watching everybody working together for a good cause. So that's all I have.
We raised about over $50,000 for the hoagie sale, benefiting families in Washington Township. So
Great.
Great job, everyone.
I have no new business. Angela?
No.
Reports. Longfellow?
Yes, there's a Cupid Chase 5K run. It's kind of the first run of the year. That's taking place in Washington Lake Park this Saturday. The race starts at 10 a.m. Registration opens at 8 a.m. All members of council and the mayor have been invited. And if you're into 5Ks and walking, last time I checked, it looks like a nice day. But with the weather that we have these days, who knows? But I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you guys can make it.
Dana?
Yes, I attended the sports advisory meeting last week, and they're having their 14th annual soccer tournament. It's an Easter tournament. It's April 14th and 15th. There's 200 teams and 2 teams from Argentina. This is their 3rd year coming in a row, and the sign-ups deadline is March 21st. Also, basketball, softball, lacrosse, track sign-ups are still going on for spring. Sign up at the municipal building or the respective complexes.
I just have to report that I was at the MUA meeting the other day, and they just did their reorg, and I had the pleasure of swearing in Jack at the meeting. So.
I have no reports at this time. Angela?
Yeah, the Veterans Advisory Board had their reorg on the 6th, on Monday, and they just talked about, getting ready for Memorial Day and things, and also there is a Military Hall of Honor that they do every year, and so I'll just read this. Washington Township High School invites nominees for the school's Military Hall of Honor. If you're a Washington Township High School graduate who has served or is currently serving in the U.S. Armed Forces, there's an application process and a formal introduction ceremony in 2017 is Monday, May 22nd at 6 p.m. So there's more information if you know anyone or if anyone's interested in applying for it. I can pass that on to you. And then obviously all of council's invited to that event, but later down the road, I'll remind you.
Thank you.
That's all she wrote.
Move on to public participation. Do I have a motion to open to the public?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Members from the public, please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you. And you can come up at this time. Please state your name and address.
My name's Gerald Keir. I'm from Whitman Square, Turnersville section. We had an election back in November, and I wonder how many of the people up here ran and said that they were going to help control taxes. And I'm not going to ask you individually because I know who some of them were. However, I'm pretty much upset about these $275,000 of potential difference between minimum and maximum. $275,000. That's a lot of money. Now, my next question is, why would we advertise this kind of number when if you're going out to hire people, wouldn't you put out a lower number and say it's the minimum and see who you get? You might get some well-qualified people coming in for a lot less than the maximum, because I think these stink. They absolutely stink. And anybody who votes for them is nuts.
Pete Delbro, 236 Salina Road. Just had one thing that just point out. The one thing that I was listening to you guys all say, and the one thing I have a problem with is that, just 2 months ago, we went to redo our kitchen, and I said to my wife, I said, we can't redo it now because our property taxes are due. And every time you raise that, or you get those numbers and you think it's just $4,000 here, or $2,000 there, you're raising that number on all of us. And the problem is, a zoning officer is not going to fix that. These businesses are not leaving. You know why Diamond Furniture left? He didn't leave because we have a zoning officer. We don't have a zoning officer, full-time or no full-time. He left because the property taxes are too high.
That's incorrect.
He's just one of many businesses. So when you're saying that we're just raising this, that's the issue, though. You're pushing people away from these businesses. They're not leaving because they're not having business. All of us are business. Seven-figure guy. You probably know that, right? That makes sense to you. You need people in this township. You need to bring the tax number down. That's how you draw people to the township. You're pushing them out. Every time you raise it here, there, or anywhere, you're just raising it up. You're not helping people. You're not going to fill these businesses by pushing people out of the town. That's what fills businesses. That's very simple. It's just easy business. Think about that. I was late tonight because I worked a double, hoping that I can bring more customers into my business so I can pay that property tax. You're not going to have young professionals move into this township every time you raise that number. Every time it just seems like a couple dollars here, a couple dollars there. You have to think about the taxpayer. This seems like a political football that you're throwing back and forth, but think about us. Think about the people. Think about me. Think about my son. He's the person that wants to live in this township. He loves this township. He wants to live here. But you're not going to have businesses that are going to stay when they don't have customers. It's very simple. If we can work together and come together, we can solve this problem. You got to stop fighting among yourselves and understand, just think about us. Don't think about political bosses and other people. Think about us, the taxpayer, the person who had to walk in here last week with 2 checks to pay his tax bill. And it was a line, and there was a line of people standing there, and nobody had a smile. Not one of us was smiling, you know. So really think about that when you make these decisions. Think about that. Think about those children. You see them at the hoagie sale. Well, think about their parents. Their parents are out working to send them to these schools, to get them what they need, to get them everything to live in this township. They want to be here, but we can't be if you keep pushing these numbers up. If you keep pushing them, people like us and everyone else out here is gonna have to leave. And that's what's really happening to these businesses. Boarding them up, getting a new zoning officer, please think about these decisions. Let's do the right thing. Let's really help people. Let's say, listen, you know, you're right. Let's think about the people and let's try to help them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm old and stupid, pardon. Welcome to everybody, new council, new mayor. I assume this is working. One thing I've been council.
Name, sir?
Joe Fernicola, 14 Goodwin Parkway. I've been up here a number of times.
Good evening.
I'm sure I am a pain, but you know what?
Nah.
I know a lot of things. I've been around here a long time. One of the things that upsets me a lot, and I'm sure that most of the people here feel the same way, we don't talk about what we're going to bring in as new revenue. All we do is tax the same people on the standpoint of their residents. That's all we do from a tax standpoint is tax all these people year in and year out. We don't see any growth in business in this township. I don't think there's been any big business. So I think what we really should focus on in this new council and with the mayor is look and get some major companies in here for rateable purposes. And we got to forget this increase and all this. There should be a freeze. We should regionalize, and there should be frozen salaries until we come up with a plan to help these people, including myself, because I'm on a fixed income. I still work part-time at 67 years old. Why? Because taxes go up. But I think, honestly, focus on what you can bring in, not what you can put out, salary-wise. That's all we're hearing about is salary increases. This is outrageous. It's only February and we're talking about an increase in salaries. Hello? What are you going to bring in from a revenue standpoint? How many companies, how many more pizzerias, in all due respect to people who own pizzerias, are going to be built here? I mean, seriously, Nick, you know what I'm talking about. I think we should focus on regionalizing, cutting costs, and finding a revenue stream that brings in big business. The other stuff is nonsense. We don't need any raises. We don't need new employees. And maybe the police department should be under civil service, too. That'd be something to think about. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
How many police departments does he run?
Joe, just on that note, I have been somewhat.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We call that a mic drop.
Yeah, well played. Joe, I don't know if you've been in any of the zoning board or planning board meetings. There are some businesses in the pipeline. I am very hopeful that some of this stuff starts to get built in the spring. Look, it's not a Wegmans, it's not a Trader Joe's, you know, but it's little stuff that is going to help build our rateable
Maybe we
base.
should look
And
at
down the
something-
road, I
Yeah,
think
you know what would be nice, looking at some maybe sporting companies or operations, something to bring traffic in here. But really, where we need is the major ratables. We don't have it anymore.
I know.
These people are paying their brains out. I mean, I remember in the last 5 years, my taxes increased $4,200 or something like that. I mean, what are we doing here? But I think if we can bring in some sporting events or something like that, I would love to see maybe a hockey team, an independent baseball team, something to draw people in here. But we need big business. Now, I don't know whether the open space is a problem where we could bring in and solicit major companies, angel investors, something where we could meet with major players throughout the United States. I mean, let's put it on the website for us. Say, Washington Township looking for quality businesses. Let's show a little initiative.
I think we need to start cold calling businesses. I think
Absolutely.
putting out this RFP to get someone to truly start looking at what grants are available.
Yeah.
Start making some of the connections that we need to bring some of these people into this town.
I think that would
are very
pacify
important.
the public, because all we're talking about tonight is increasing
We don't need to
salaries.
pacify the public. We need to
Well,
fix their taxes.
We need to reduce taxes.
Right.
New Jersey is never going to reduce taxes.
But we need
have
to
to
at
take
least
initiative on our
hold
own
the
as a
line on 'em.
municipality.
Right.
And we were able
have
to do that
it,
last year.
And we do.
And I'm hopeful that we can do that this year.
Yes.
But I think we should really think about shared services. That's
I agree.
major issue.
I agree.
We'll have to get a block or something.
and I live in Newport. And I just, there are a couple of things I came up here to talk about. But one, at the beginning when the open discussion, and I know one councilwoman was talking, I really took offense to the defensiveness and the nasty tone that our business administrator, who's supposed to be up there representing our mayor and us, took to the councilwoman and not letting her discuss what she had to say. She had, she's a numbers person, so let the town hear the numbers, because I don't think anybody wants that. Or the town wants that, but I don't think you guys want that. I don't think you want everybody knowing what's going on. So with that being said, you said you were going to be transparent, and we read it every time. The paper says, oh, we're going to be transparent, we're going to be transparent. When we were appointing our clerk, it was transparent. They went out for, they put it out in the paper. They had several different applications. They went through and they picked a very qualified candidate. There were no, when the other appointments came through, I didn't see any advertisements for the attorney, and I didn't see one for the business administrator, and now there sure wasn't one for the zoning person, which I don't even know why that's being appointed. But where's the transparency in all that? And you're telling the people of the town, there's a lot of people unemployed in our town who perhaps have the qualifications that you do, maybe not make you as much as you were before you started this job that obviously isn't going to pay enough. But there might be somebody that's in our own town that was very qualified that could have put an application in and had it looked at. But that wasn't even an option. So I guess we talk about transparency, we talk about doing what's right for our town. We're only 30 days into this, and it's not happening now. I mean, everything, the nice little things you put in the paper, that's not making everybody happy. And from what I can tell, you're saying you're going to take care of the taxes, you're not going to raise them, you're going to take care of the people of the town. But that's not going to happen if you're going to raise the salaries of a few selected people that you're going to give more money to. It's wrong. And I don't know how you can't look at numbers. Numbers don't lie. That's my point. So.
They most certainly don't. We actually had the opportunity that the last administration didn't proactively take the initiative to work with department heads. Our director of public works, we just actually sat down and did the budget and actually cut the budget by $63,000. So I think there's some value to that.
Does that mean that the people who have only been in office for 30 days get a raise based on the fact that you can cut it? I mean, I guess I'd like to see what happens with all of that, and that's all transparent because that's all public knowledge. So everybody will know. People in TV land will be able to
absolutely.
see. And then they'll say, why do we have somebody from another town doing a job that maybe somebody in our town would love to have had? I mean, you're not being transparent. And if it's not good enough, and you obviously it wasn't enough for you, then go someplace else. But when you talk to our council the way you did, totally disrespecting them, I take offense to that.
I disagree. I did not disrespect or respond to your question.
Everybody here.
Everybody out there is telling you most certainly would disrespect them.
I beg to disagree.
There are a lot of people out there that know your work. You're ignorant.
Thank you.
Your salaries.
Really?
No, it's not.
Mayor, council members, constituents of Washington Township, I come to here saying that there is an unrelenting problem in Washington Township.
Sir, can I just get
My name is Bob Alvarez, 11 Bainbridge Lane, Sewell, New Jersey. I've been in the community for 15 years. I'm outside looking in. And it's time that we speak really. Let's look at these numbers. It is a problem affecting every city, town, borough, township in the United States. It can be explained by an insurmountable obstacle by municipalities, business administrators, and definitely swept away for the next administration to confront. We have the next administration. It is surely online related. It is surely complacency related. It is surely lack of budget related. The question that cannot be ignored, because residents drive past it every day, is why can't township government help fill the empty retail commercial space, retain loyal businesses, avoid the ghost town effect before developing areas identified for growth? As in most financially motivated circumstances, the answer is very simple. It's revenue. Building creates more tax revenue than open space. However, empty buildings are a continuing problem that has not been effectively addressed in the township for many years, attributed to the recession of 2008. It's 2017. To concentrate on our local case, you, the current Washington Township elected officials, recognize the situation and in order to be elected, address the problem to be solved. New Mayor Joanne Gattinelli said her goals, if elected, were, quote, promote economic development by reviewing the policies and procedures for current and incoming businesses and eliminate any unnecessary steps to delay within these processes. She also said, quote, managing the expenses and turning a profit is not easy for our business owners, especially with rising rents within our commercial properties. New councilperson Dana Pasqualone said, quote, bring in new businesses that are desirable to the community. Quote, review our financial records to secure the funds to support my initiatives and to make Washington Township a premier community once again. When I moved here 15 years ago, this was a premier community. New councilperson and vice president of council Joseph Perry said, quote, make Washington Township business friendly by creating a climate that will support all current businesses and attract new ones. Councilperson and former council president Sean Longfellow said, quote, I would propose reconstituting the Economic Development Board and actually go out and pursue businesses that we believe are a good fit for our community. Which is reiterated that tonight.
Which is done.
Correct. Councilperson and former council vice president Angela Donato said, quote, currently it's very difficult and not cost effective for companies to bring their business to Washington Township. I would like to see the current ordinances adjusted to make it easier for companies to want to bring their business to our town. Finally, councilperson and new council president Nick Fazio said, quote, we need to market our township in a more effective manner to draw business. At times this means that we need to provide incentives to developers who in turn will create jobs and add revenue. The Advisory Board of Economic Development. At the last council meeting, Councilperson Donato stated that the Reform Board had met and that a presentation will be made at the February 22nd, 2017 council meeting. After 3 meetings last year, agenda minutes are on the WT website, the consensus was that a plan is needed, ideas and people to contact were suggested, and follow through promised. Failed. Our board is comprised of volunteers from various business disciplines dedicated to helping your business succeed. That's a quote on the website. Almost finished. Township development marketing is too important, too competitive, too complicated proposition to rely on volunteers meeting once a month in spite of their credentials. Washington Township must have at least one dedicated paid consultant or employee to spearhead the effort similar to Glassboro's success. Lack of attention, delays, positive results. I was happy to hear that an RFP is being put on. Yes, sir.
In addition, it is not an additional attorney that is needed. It is promotion, brand design, a marketer that is necessary for the board to succeed. Does it not sound like an important enough task to consider earmarking funds for the township budget coordinated with the Chamber of Commerce budget? I look forward to the mayor, council, and advisory board of economic development solutions later this month. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarez.
David Rimby, 47 East Holiday Avenue. How you doing? For the people that were on council in the past, I'm a resident 28 years. I've been to hundreds of council meetings over 28 years. I am a 30-year CPA, so I think I know a little bit about numbers. 25 years with the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm going to start out first with something I wasn't going to discuss, but I'm going to hone on the point. We need immediately in Washington Township to wake up on economic development. Immediately. Over the last 6 months to a year, it's appalling of how many businesses have left this community for various reasons. The Blackwoods Pike needs a major overhaul. That's something that's been talked about for a long time. These retail stores, we need to work with existing landlords to work with some type of incentive program to reduce the rent. Unfortunately, the rents they're charging, and they're my clients, so I see the rent rolls. They are the same numbers they saw in the 2000s when things were good. We need to come up with a creative program to get these existing retail spots back in business. And we don't need another pizzeria, another Chinese restaurant, another nail salon. I'm not picking on those because there's some great business. But the competition in those three industries is incredible, as you well know, Mayor. I won't talk about the past, but I'll mention a bad word. We had a chance to really develop Washington Township 5 years ago. We had a chance to get AC Moore here. For whatever reason, it did not happen. That could have been the anchor to the industrial park. Now we have something else going there, which hopefully might work. I doubt if it will. But you're trying to get Randall's there. But you got to go after that. You got to start with somebody. When somebody big comes in, other people will follow. You really need to do it immediately. I can't. It's killing businesses. It really is. The next thing, talk about transparency. You really need to consider civil service. There's too many lawsuits in this town. It's more than most towns. You have no transparency. There's a lot of conflict that goes on. You really need to consider civil service. I really caution the mayor, council, and the solicitor to look into that. That might solve a lot of our problems that we've been having over the last 20 years. We're too political in this town, and it has to stop. Let's talk about the financials. That's what I know an awful lot about. I'm going to address this to the Chief Financial Officer. When is the audit going to be released?
2016?
Yes, it's not on the website.
The statutory date was June 30th. It needs to be released.
Of 17?
Of 17, yeah.
For June 30th of 16?
Yes.
Why is it taking a year to release an audit report?
It's not a year, it's 6 months.
Not from June 30th.
June 30th, 2017.
No, 16. I'm asking about the 16 audit report. It's not on the website.
Can I address it maybe from a legal standpoint?
Yeah.
The annual audit for the year preceding, this is a calendar year.
No, it's a fiscal year. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. December 31st. I corrected. So it's June 30th. I'm correct. I'm sorry. I forgot.
The auditors have just completed the annual financial
Okay.
statement, which will be put on the website as soon as I get it.
Okay. So Bowman is finishing up their audit.
No, that's an unaudited group.
No, I say Bowman is finishing up their audit.
We'll be in to finish up the audits.
Okay. I have another question. And I know I talked to the Chief Financial Officer about this in a public fall meeting, and I talked to him out in his own office. The township has on their books $865,625 of an asset. That's called property acquired for tax assessed valuation. But what I've been told, that's property that Washington Township owns for 5 years, still on the books. Are we planning to sell it? What are we doing with it? It's almost $1 million. 5 years on the books. What is the administration's position and council's position on trying to get rid of these assets and getting some cash? I hear this, Rick is.
I believe that what you're talking about is a property that we own and we hold a mortgage on. The asset on the books is a mortgage.
I was told that was 9 properties.
We went over that.
Yeah, and you said it was 9 properties. No, I'm not talking about the stuff on County House.
Okay.
This is $865,625. It's on the books. It's supposed to be about 8 to 9 properties.
I'll be glad to go over it with you at another time.
That's fine. It's on Bowman's Financial for 5 years, and there's a footnote disclosure. So
What is the footnote?
I didn't bring it with me, but it's disclosed.
I think it's what we talked
No,
about.
I don't think it's that one. It's the other one. It's property acquired for tax assessed value. It's not tax sale certificates. It's the other ones that you guys own.
2015 on it? I have a copy of it.
It's on the first page of the financials under assets. It's 865, 645.
David, you have 5 minutes.
I'm basically done. You can get back to me. That's fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, just see if anybody else wants to come up.
No, I'm done. That was my points.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, David.
I know that. We talked about it.
Gavarello, 270. Gavarello, 230 East Salina Road. A couple questions here. I'm really confused. Last meeting, Stonefall, you voted for a zoning officer. Did you not?
What meeting?
Last council meeting.
No,
You voted no?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. We didn't vote for that
Did you
place.
vote for a 3-year zoning officer?
I abstained from that one.
No.
Yes.
You must have not.
We both abstained. The resolution's marked in purple.
So now we have 2 zoning officers, you're saying.
I think that was already covered by our solicitor.
I'm really confused. We have over 600 empty properties, houses in Washington Township. Mr. Perry sees to give somebody a job. Why don't you just find a job working on them, cleaning them up or fixing them up to get them sold to young people in the township, to get family members or something like that? Mr. Perry, you have a daytime job?
Yeah, part-time job, I'm retired.
What is that working for?
I drive a school bus.
You have any friends that drive a school bus?
A lot of friends drive school buses.
Mr. Makuchi drive a school bus with you?
Yes, it does. What's your point?
Do you think you should abstain from voting on a fact that he's a friend of yours?
Not really.
I don't know, I think this council is going in the wrong direction. I really have a problem with it. I've been in this township for 30 years. It just seems getting worse. The people are fed up. They're fed up. Hiring friends, new council members that hire friends, make double jobs, make positions. It's ridiculous. These people have to look home, go home in the nighttime and look at yourself in the mirror. And if you feel good about yourself, then go to bed. If you don't, answer these people in the audience. Why did you vote the way you vote? Why? What are you wasting people's money for? That people are losing their houses, have lost their houses. That's the problem with the township. Your spending is out of control. The people are fed up, and you see it in Washington. It needs to be done here in Washington Township. And I'm looking at you because you brought it up, and you're the one that passed it. And I'm looking at you, that you were voted in by the people, and you betrayed their trust already. 1 month later, 1 month! 1 month later, you sold your office.
Sir, I'm going to ask Council President, we have a policy about how we do a public portion. Council President Fazio, I think you should invoke that policy.
Just calm down a little bit, Pete.
What's the rule on that regulation? I think I can speak for
Talk honestly.
Well, let's get up. Let's get up in line. Let's form a line over here, and everybody come up and say your piece. Don't let a few. Let everybody talk. And the people that are for it, you say it too. Let's start a line right here. Let's start a line of township people that are fed up. How about that?
Hey, my name's Mike Bissetta, 37 Goodwin Parkway, 29 years. We put you up there. We put you up there.
No.
Yeah,
You didn't put me up there. People in the township put me. No, let me finish.
We are the people. We are the people.
We are.
We are the people.
One at a time. One at a time.
We are the people. You know, I don't understand why we need a full-time job when we've been doing this
Council
very,
President
very...
Fazio, sir, we're not going to speak over each other.
Okay.
We have a civility code.
So then-
One person at a time.
I'm speaking.
Hold on a second. Hold on. You have to be recognized by the council. Hold on 1 second. First of all, the gentleman was before I started. I didn't catch your last name.
Gal Borrella.
Will you finish with your remarks, or is this 5 minutes up?
Yes, it's 5 minutes left.
Okay.
I'll sit down from the floor to Mr.
Sir, just your name and address for the record.
My name's Mike Bissetta, 37 Goodwin Parkway. I've been here 29 years. said, listen, I don't understand why we need a full-time zoning job when the one that's been done part-time has been adequate. I've heard this gentleman say here, well, you know what, we can go after dilapidated properties on 42, et cetera. That's not the reason. The other man, Mr. Del Borello, he announced it, he explained it quite clearly. You drive them out with the taxes, and we're tired of paying for it. But anyway, to get back to the zoning office, you know what, this is, Mr. Del Borello has a point. We're really tired of people like politicians that come to us, ask us for help, and then they turn their back on what we think we have as an agreement that, you know what, we're going to work together and make this a better township. We're just really sick of it. That's why the change is taking place in D.C. right now. People are fed up with it. Just fed up. I got to tell you, I wish I could just control my emotions here and bring them right down to the point, but you know what? I think we did a better job with John Carlo, to be honest. But you know what? It's a little out of hand right now. And you know, we know Mr. McCucci back there, and you ran with us. You sat with us. You were with us. You were even with us Wednesday night. I got to tell you, you just crushed the spirit of everybody, buddy. Next. Dawn.
Hi, my name is Dawn Petrovich. I live in Heritage Valley. I don't know what the policy is for putting in place new members on council as far as positions, and whether those positions need to be voted in as far as what that requirement is on that position. What's the job description? Do you post that anywhere? Do you give us that information so we in the public know what that means?
If we would have went out to solicit for our resumes, it would have been posted, but this position that is in question was not.
I think that's unfair. I work in a big hospital, and if I need to get a job in any other department, I would have to see a posting. If that position's not posted, it's illegal. I don't understand how this happens. Can anybody explain that?
Politics might do it.
So you're telling me that this position was never posted, the position's given to somebody, we don't even know what the requirements are, we don't know what his job.
Ma'am, the requirements are in the township code. They are codified.
So explain them to us. Tell us what the requirements are.
The zoning officer job?
Yeah.
To liaise with businesses, bring them in, help them along with their permits,
What's
go
the
out
job
and make sure that...
description? What does that entail? How
Ma'am,
many
I
hours
could read
per
it
week?
for you if you'd like.
Yeah.
It's 40 hours a week.
So why now
That's-
is
because it's
it
full-time.
2 full-time positions instead of a
Well,
part-time?
it's one full-time zoning officer, and that's it.
You just said you're hiring a second one.
No, we have a person who's been doing it part-time. She's going to go in solely to do her job as a union clerk 3.
Okay, so explain to me why we're going from part-time to a full-time. What is
It's
telling you that we need a full-time?
convoluted, and I'm not going to get into it.
If I could, first of all, just so we understand, we're talking about the position, not the particular person, but unfortunately, they're intertwined somewhat. The position of zoning officer in the Washington Township Code is a full-time position. It is a full-time position.
So how long has this woman that's done it part-time, how long has she done it?
There was, I don't want to get into what happened previously, and I don't want to get into whether or not her appointment, as far as I'm concerned, that occurred at reorganization and how it was dealt with.
And then it was changed.
She was at least the de facto zoning officer, because she's taken action, and I don't want to expose the township to any liability.
No, I
Any liability. No, sir, I haven't. Believe me, I haven't, sir. You may know your business. I definitely know my business. Now, so the position is a full-time position. And let me explain what the zoning officer position is. It's really twofold, and I can read it, but it's really two things. The zoning administrative officer, which means they administrate the entire zoning code throughout the township that's on the books. We have a very extensive land use code. So the zoning administrative officer, they handle all zoning questions. They deal with all zoning permits. They evaluate whether or not a use is permitted. When somebody wants to make a development application, they're involved in all aspects of that. So that's zoning administrative officer. The second, and again, you can probably pick out 100 things. I'm just giving you the broad strokes to your question. The second major thing that any zoning officer does is the zoning enforcement officer. And the zoning enforcement officer, like you would imagine, because the definition is self-evident, is they enforce the zoning code where it is not being complied with. It's not really about punishment, it's about bringing people into compliance. And the problem that you have typically is, and again, we don't want to tax businesses, but there are businesses that may be operating illegally, maybe not be operating with zoning permits, and therefore may not have gotten proper construction permits, so it becomes a public health and safety issue, it becomes a permitting issue, and becomes a compliance issue. So zoning enforcement and zoning administration, two major things for a very large community, and that is clearly a full-time position. So I don't want to get into any further details. It is what it is. It's a full-time position, and council voted the way they did. They had a full debate on it. At least we have an introduction of some ordinances. Moving forward with the salary ordinance, it remains a full-time position. They tried to make it a part-time position, and that motion failed.
Sal Capola, 8 Stamen Lane. It seems like, there are always 100 reasons why we should add somebody and spend more money. The government always seems to need more and more money. It's like the federal government. We always forget, though, that somebody has to pay that bill. And I've seen many of my neighbors leave the neighborhood. They go back to Pennsylvania, south, down at the shore, because they just can't afford the real estate taxes. Between school, township, county, it just keeps on going higher and higher. So I don't know where it stops. I really don't. I guess we end up when we don't have any people left in the township. I'm just very disappointed with the vote tonight. I'm very disappointed with some of the people that voted here tonight that were supposed to stop this craziness, this uncontrollable spending that keeps on going on. And I hope you will come to your senses someday and you think about the people that voted for you and stop these taxes.
Mr. Fazio, Council President, typically the protocol is unless everybody's done with one round of public speaking, then we wouldn't go to a second turn.
I'll
So I
allow
don't
him a
know if anybody
second.
wants to speak
Go ahead,
first.
Jerry.
My name is Gerald Keard. I told you before, I'm from Turnersville, Whitman Square. I have put up with a road that you finally are going to pave, Stagecoach Road. That thing has been a violation of the state highway code. It's been that way for 4, 5, 6 years. We didn't need a zoning officer to not know that. I have a neighbor across the street. He was upset because the backyard of his adjoining neighbor was overgrown. There was funny little furry animals living in it. I told him, call the zoning officer. Nothing happened. Fellow went by, looked at the front yard, didn't look at the backyard. Several years ago, there were trees violating the site triangle. That's all part of a zoning code. I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but a zoning site triangle is so that you can see up one street and the other without obstruction. I'm glad we don't have another record snowfall like we did a few years ago, because the zoning officer never came out and corrected the snow removal people. Piles that high out into an adjoining street. I just hope that if you're taking and spending the money to hire another zoning official, that you make them do the job.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Murphy, 53 Glen Parkway. I have a couple questions. Salary and benefits. I know a little bit about that. Biggest portion of your budget. So you're creating jobs. So I'm just trying to understand, if I listen to this argument, I sat there because typically I won't come up and speak at these meetings, but if I listen to your discussion, it was, if we could have 2 jobs done by the same person effectively, we shouldn't do it. because you can qualify it, and some towns do, as a full-time job. So because we can have 2 full-time positions, we should. So my question to you is, what is going to be the return on that investment? And let me finish before you guys jump in on this. This zoning officer, does it require a certification to do the job? I know it does. You know why I know it does? Because we paid for the existing zoning officers' certifications. You, all paid for that. So when you decided that you need 2 full-time people to do this job, did you have a discussion about maybe keeping the certified zoning officer in the zoning officer job? Or we have to send the new part-time, full-time, whatever you want to call it, to training, become a zoning officer? Return on investment, salary and benefits, but yet we're talking about transparency, we're not interviewing people, and we're going to cut taxes. Look, I know what tough times are, but what I have a hard time doing is creating positions. Every time we create a position, we need to show them, us, return on investment. And I'm going to come back up here, and I'm going to ask you what that is. And it's not going to be about shaking hands with people and cutting ribbons. There's a whole lot more to this than that. Because every single administration, Democrat or Republican, has come to my door and said, we need to bring business into Washington Township. It's not going to happen with a zoning officer in a whatever the other person is now called. And I think it's terrible the way it was handled for that employee that's still in the district.
Hi. Ruth Weiss, 36 Bridge Drive, Turnersville. I'm a retailer, and I own 2 businesses in Township for 20 years. I closed one business in 2014. The business wasn't there. The other business, well, that business was a tea house. It was a specialty tea shop. And a lot of labor, so I had 2 businesses at the same time. I first came to Washington Township 23 years ago from Cherry Hill, where I had a business in Cherry Hill for 20 years. And the specialty tobacco business, Green Tree Tobacco, was my business. I just sold it this past year to people, foreign people, and they said if taxes continue, they're going to take the business and move to Glassboro, move closer, someplace else. I sold the business because what you have to realize for a retailer, we have the internet. It's killing every little business that helps to make these townships. To have people come to a small business, they're treated nicely, you care about them, you talk with them, they feel important, they feel like, hey, somebody cares. And that's part of being a little business, a small business. And you see that when you go to Pasta Pomodoro, Vito, he's there, hey, how you doing? All the time, right? So the things that it's hard for people to understand. If you're not on your feet 10 hours a day, either trying to take care of your overhead, your taxes, because we have local taxes, we have state taxes. Tobacco products have a 30% tobacco tax that was very absorbent and very difficult, but people came because they came for the service. They came for the individual care. We had a great business. Now, when everything fell apart in 2008, when you have a luxury business like people going out to eat, people buying higher quality items, or cigars. These are luxury. They cut them back. So from '08, we all had a devastating situation in business. So I just wanted to share that with you. As a retailer, as a business owner, my husband's been in this township over 30 years, and he loves the township, and I hear him very often talking about our property taxes. And if there's ever anything I can do to help or to offer for anyone as a perspective from the business people's point of view, call me, please. I'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Burton Weiss, 36 Bridge Drive, retired professor. I lived in the township for now over 30 years. And I just can't believe the things that go on. There's so much corruption. It's incredible. And, you know, I built I got a permit and I built a screen gazebo. I live on a small lake, Lake Irwin. I built it, and a zoning person came and wouldn't sign off on it because it was 45 feet from the lake instead of being 50. So, okay, I put that on the back burner. Then 2 doors down, they gave permits to somebody to build multiple structures on the lake edge and into the lake. And this goes on all over the place. There's so much corruption. Like, you don't know somebody in some office, you don't get it. And it's awful. And I've got a list, and the list doesn't have to get much longer because I'm going to sue if it keeps up. There's too much corruption. There's no business being corrupt like that. Everybody should be treated fairly. And I pay the highest taxes in my whole development. And what do we get? No, it's just nonsense, and there's no excuse for it. And you're the elected officials that govern things. You should straighten these people out or fire them. Thank you.
I just close out my portion. Party affiliation is something that's really bad in this township. It's a killer. It's a poison, and it's sickening. My family pays $1,000 a week in property tax in this township, so I think I have some room to speak to you. Mr. Longfellow, you're obviously an opposite party affiliation than I am. Why would you bring up a Republican appointment to council?
Well qualified. I think he can do the job.
Yeah, but the present officer, I don't want to mention her name because I think nobody said anything about the rights laws, but okay. The present officer brings in over $300,000 for a position that she established in this township for property maintenance that's trying to make the township look better. And now you want to put somebody in there that lost 3 elections in the township? I don't follow it. But anyway, I'm going to ask for a recall for Mr. Perry. I'm going to start a petition in the township to recall him. And I hope a couple of months from now we can have this resolved. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Seeing no one else from the public, do I have a motion to close?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, council is going to go into executive session. This is a resolution authorizing executive session. This is for Pinnacle Place over affordable housing litigation. May take up to 30 minutes. There may be action taken afterwards. Do I have a motion?
It also includes, by the way, negotiations as well.
Negotiations as well. Do I have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Sean motion, I second it. All right, do we have a motion to return to the public meeting?
Make that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No action was taken in the meeting. And motion to adjourn.
Make that motion?
Second.
All. We're not open
No.
to the public right now. Make a motion to open to the public.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Excuse me, we have a motion on the floor to adjourn this meeting. That motion has to be acted on before you do anything else,
I didn't
according to
finish
Robert's
this.
rules.
Leo, I didn't finish the sentence.
Okay.
So, motion to open to the public. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just have a question. I've been to school board meetings and they talk and they go over their agenda, then they open to the public and the public gets to say how they feel. And then they close it and then they do all their voting and then they open it to the public again. It may not always be what the public wants, but at least you have the public's opinion. Because the public put you people there. You didn't just get there by chance. I mean, I know in our campaign, we walk, we donate money, they walk, we get money. I mean, it's not like it's just something that just happens by chance. So the people want to know what's going on. So when you have an opinion and somebody comes to talk, I think they should be able to be heard before you guys go making decisions. I guess that's what this all boils down to. And then I know, I understand the 5-minute rule. I've been here when there's people that go way over 5 minutes. I get it because it's really gets obnoxious. So I don't have a problem with that. But what I have a problem with is you guys go and make all these decisions and then everybody's upset because you didn't really know what anybody really felt. And maybe if you had, maybe some people wouldn't have voted the way they did. That's just my piece. I mean, is there a possibility that you could put that in there to try to do something to be fair to everybody who comes out to these meetings and be heard prior to making decisions that are out there?
Absolutely. And I know they've done it in the past in Washington Township where they have a motion to open to the public only about agenda items only. So it's specific to what's on the agenda. And yeah, we can look at bringing it back.
I think that would be helpful. And then those are the things that you're voting on. Then you can have people's opinions. And then maybe something like this would have been tabled before you appoint somebody for a position that we don't even have a salary for. Kind of doesn't make any sense to me, but that's just kind of, I don't know, whatever. Yeah, and it opens us up to more lawsuits. Now we got Sherry, who's probably going to have a lawsuit because she just was appointed. No matter what you say, she was appointed. It was out there for a 3-year appointment. So now we got another lawsuit. And we're hiring a person that already sued the town. So how do we do this? And where do you stop? Where do you say enough is enough? It aggravates my world. I'm not a political person. I don't care whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, independent. Do the right thing by the people that put you here. Not by the few in the background, but by the town, the people that pay the taxes. And they're counting on you to do the right thing. And some people do. And I know not every decision's always going to be everybody's way. I get that. But when you're doing it because somebody else is pulling the strings behind the background, big mistake. Big, big mistake. And like somebody said, if you can sleep at night, then go. I can't imagine, but I couldn't make a decision. I'm an honest person. I don't steal. I don't cheat. And I back you if you do the right thing. But when you don't, and you're doing it for the wrong reasons, then everybody hurts. And you can see it in this town. You see how many people have moved, people who can't afford to stay here, people that whine that they're not making enough and need more, that sit up here, and it just blows my mind. I mean, I can walk into this township and you can see the activity going on daily. Some of these positions probably don't require a full-time. Why don't you switch things up? You work in a private sector, people pull from jobs all the time. My husband works in the hotels. He's a director of sales and operations, of sales and marketing. He is on the floor. If they have somebody coming in, he's not above going up to switch rooms and change sheets on beds because they need the help, because they got a big busload of somebody coming into the hotel. I mean, that's what people do. But I don't see that in public. I don't see that in the private sector. I mean, the public sector. The private sector, everybody works because you have to work or you could lose your job. Around here, everybody sues when they lose their job. So I don't know. I'll walk away. I just am so upset about tonight because I really don't think everybody's looking out for everybody in the town. They're looking out for somebody else, and that's themselves or somebody in the background. So thank you.
Motion to close to the public.
Make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's over.